So now that we know what the critical path is, the next thing we need to do is what we call as the forward pass. You would start out with the first activity here and move to the right. So there is a couple of different rules to remember when you do the forward pass. You take the early start plus duration minus 1 as the early finish date. And the reason we do minus 1 is because for A and C, you are going to start this activity on the very first day. All right. And it starts the very beginning of the day and it ends at the very end of the day. And you cannot count that day twice. It's only one day. So this would start out, for example, with 1. So this is the very first day. And you would take 1 plus 9 equals to 10. And 10 subtract 1 equals to 9. In the same way, for the activity C, it will start with the day 1. 1 plus 13, 14 minus 1 equals 13. Now one thing we will notice that the nodes that take off from start have the early finish date same as the duration. That is 9 equals 9 and 13 equals to 13 here. Okay, so then what we do to move forward? There is another rule that you need to be aware of, that you'll notice here that B has two different nodes that precede it. And always know that when you are moving forward on the forward pass, your numbers add up, right? So when you get to the very end, they should add up to 48, which is our critical path. Okay. So what you want to make sure is as these numbers move forward, they get higher. So since you have two nodes that feed into B, that is A and C, right? So you want to make sure that you take the highest number of the two and move that number forward. In our case, it is 13. However, another thing to remember is that in this case, 13 is the end day of the 13. And we are moving to the next day. So the number will be incremented up. So for activity B, it will be day 14. Now going by the same formula, we add 14 plus duration 3, 17, and 17 minus 1 is equal to 16. So early finish date for activity B is 16. Alright, so we would normally move from B to H here. But here as we see, H has two preceding activities, that is B as well as G. And we don't know what this number would come out to be. So let's figure out. We start from this path. So here, going by the same formula, we have 13 incremented to 1, that is 14, and 14 plus 9, duration is 9, that is 23, minus 1, which is 22. Move from D to E, we increment 1 into 22, that is we write here as 23. And 23 plus duration 2, 25, minus 1, 24. Moving on to activity F. 24 is incremented to 1, that is 25, plus 10, 35, minus 1, 34. Now F2G, 34 incremented to 1, that is 35, and 35 plus duration is 11. 35 plus 11 is 46, minus 1, 45. Now as we see, activity H has two nodes preceding it, B and G. And for these two nodes, the early finish date is 16 and 45. We take the higher of the two, that is 45. 45 incremented to 1 makes it 46. 46 plus duration 3, 49 minus 1, 48. Another way to know that you have done your forward pass correctly is that from going from here to here, you should add up to 48. So finally, we get the early finish date of last activity as 48. So this is how you do the forward pass on a network diagram. The next thing we do is the backward pass. That is, literally we go from finish to start or right to left. So at the end, we got to this number 48. We put 48 right here. And going by the similar formula, we have late finish minus duration plus 1 as the late start. So 48 minus 3 duration, 45 plus 1, 46. Further, we can go from this way to this way, or we can go from this way to this way. So I'll choose the upper path. 46 will be 45 here, 45 minus 3, 42 plus 1, 43. Now this 43 becomes 42 here. 42 minus 9, 33 plus 1, 34. Now going down, this 46 becomes 45 here. 45 minus duration 11 plus 1 is 35. 35 becomes 34 here. 34 minus 10 plus 1 is 25. 25 becomes 24 here. 24 minus duration 2, 22 plus 1, 23. 23 will become 22 here. 22 minus 9 plus 1 equals 14. 14 minus 1, 13. 13 minus duration 13 plus 1 is 1. So one thing we notice that at the end we had the 48 and finally we got to the number 1. So you'll notice a couple of different things here. So remember when I said that when you're doing the forward pass, you know that you've done it correctly because you end up with the number 48, which is equal to critical path. When you're moving backwards, it becomes 1 because you end up with 1. Okay, so that is another way to check that you've done your backward pass correctly. And another way to check is that you'll notice that each of the activity on this critical path, we subtract 48 from 48 or 46 from 46, you end up with a 0. So each one of these, if you were to subtract them, they would end up with 0. Because each one of these is your critical path, and the reason why it is 0 is because there is no any float. If you were to delay any activity, let's say activity C by 2 days, then your entire project will be delayed by 2 days. There is no float, there is no wiggle room or anything on this critical path. So that's another way to know that you've done this correctly, is that you're on your critical path, the top number is equal to bottom number, right, along your critical path. And if you were to subtract them, it will be 0. So that's another way to check that you have done your backward pass correctly. So now that we have completed the forward pass and we have done the backward pass, the next thing you would do is to see if there is any float on the activities other than what was there on the critical path, right? Because we have already established that on the critical path there is 0 float, which means if you were to delay any of these activities, your project will be delayed an equal amount of time. So the activities that don't fall on the critical path are activities A and activity B. So if you were to subtract 16 from 45, you get 29. And same way, if you subtract 1 from 34, you get 33. Right? And the same thing here, 16 from 45 and 14 from 43, it is 29. And same way here, 9 from 42 is 33. However, if it is not so, then you might need to go back and recalculate your forward pass and the backward pass to make sure that your numbers are right now. So what this tells us is that for this path, you have 33 days of total float. And the float means it's the time that you can move these activities. You can delay them without actually affecting the critical path of your project. So that would tell you that you have 33 days you can mess around. And if it goes beyond 33 days, then it can actually affect the project and your critical path. And then you would have to take a look at that to see if there is any other maneuvers that you can make to bring your project back on track. So that is an example of creating a network diagram.